Tottenham go to Anfield and get a draw. Richarlison haunts Liverpool once again. So their frustration huge. Feels like a win. Not that we know what a win feels like at the moment in 2026. Let's be honest and real about it. But welcome to this episode of the Scarfey Spurs podcast, an award-winning podcast after winning 2 awards in 2025. Of course, founded in 2023. So thank you, as always, for your continued support for me, as well as Britain's best young football content creator, voted by you in 2025. And tonight is going to be fantastic. And I'm just over the moon that we're finally not discussing a defeat. And I always like to look at the positives anyway. Let's introduce the panel then. We'll cover everything. No stone will be unturned. Cam, first guest of tonight, thank you so much for coming on. How are you doing? Good to have you.
Yeah, I'm doing well, thank you. I can't believe that I'm coming on here and we're talking about a positive result. It feels like it's been forever. And yeah, I mean, not yet. We've not won just yet, but it is a positive result. And considering how we do at Anfield as well, you have to be happy for that. But yeah, I'm glad to be on. I'm glad to be talking about a positive result for Spurs for once.
Absolutely that, Cam. Thank you for your time. Jordan, welcome back onto the podcast. I believe your 3rd or 4th appearance, so thank you. Great to have you on more often now, and you've got future dates planned in as well, which I'm glad to say. So thank you for your time, and how are you doing after that draw?
Yeah, definitely, mate. Appreciate the invite. So I'm looking forward to, as you say, speaking about something that's actually not, heartbreaking this time. Lots of positives to cover, so sure we'll get into them. And yeah, I'm all good. Thank you. Looking forward to it.
Should be good. Thank you, Jordan, very, very much. And third guest is Luke from Spotlite On Spurs, a fantastic individual and a fantastic podcast that he's got, all down to his amazing work. Luke, how are you doing? Good to have you.
Thank you very much, mate. Far too kind. Yeah, I was all prepped and ready to come on and it be a miserable one. And we're talking, as you said, trying to find positives in a result where there was none. So it's refreshing. I'm gonna have to get into a new bit of rhythm and routine, I hope, for future podcasts and making sure that there's loads of positivity. But yeah, no, thank you for having me on, and a really, really good result. I think it was well deserved by the end of the game, but I'm sure we'll get into it.
Absolutely. Thank you to all my guests. Before we get started, just want to say, if you ever want to get in touch, let us know how you feel as a Spurs fan, or your feedback on the podcast, or you just have a question, drop me an email, scarfharry323@gmail.com, or just leave a comment on YouTube, on email, whatever it may be. And if you're listening live, for example, on YouTube, you can get involved and we can read out your comment. If you're listening after, you can read out your comment next time, and I definitely always see and reply to them. But let's get straight into it and refresh over what the lineup was, if we think pre-match for Liverpool. So the lineup, nobody knowing, let's be clear, who was starting where, really, if we're being honest, based on we've seen what square pegs and round holes. I think we can all agree with that under Igor Tudor so far in these 4 to 5 games. But he went with Vicario, Spence, Dragusin, Danso, Porro, Sousa, Sarr, Gray, Tell, Solanke, Richarlison. Cam, when that team was announced, an hour and 15 before kickoff, what were you thinking and what formation did you expect it to be?
Well, in terms of team selection, I kind of knew what to expect to an extent because, of course, with the injury crisis, we haven't got much options at this rate. I think it was more like where players are going to be positioned, where they're actually going to be on the pitch. And of course, we saw against Liverpool. If you told me pre-match that Sousa was going to be on the right, then yeah, I wouldn't have believed you. And yeah, with the team, I did expect it pretty much. I didn't know where anyone was going to be. And yeah, when I saw the team, I saw that we had Xavi Simons and Colomani on the bench, 2 senior outfield players. Apart from that, it was pretty sure all academy players. So I was thinking, okay, is Tudor late on in the game? Is it going to be that we only do 2 substitutions? Is Tudor actually going to trust the youth or not? And it seems like he did, and it seems like he paid off, which of course we'll get into, of course. But yeah, I think in terms of team selection, I think I did expect what Tudor put out for the most part, and I was just hoping that it was going to work, to be honest, because I looked at that bench and it wasn't all too convincing. I'll definitely say that. Of course, the defense as well. I know that Van der Ven and Romero have both been poor for Tottenham this season, but I looked at the defense and I wasn't particularly too comfortable with Danso and Dragusin. Danso's actually been quite good, to be fair. I think on the positive side, I think he's actually been quite good for us when Van der Ven and Romero let us down at times. I think he's been a positive character in the dressing room, of course, on the pitch as well. But then, I look at Dragusin, I look at Porro, I'm thinking, okay, we really have to hope that one of these players doesn't have like, you know, a bad moment during the game, because it could definitely cost us. It looks like it wasn't an outfield player. It was actually Vicario, who costed us there. And you know, if it wasn't for him, who knows what could have happened. But yeah, for the team, I expected for the most part what, you know, Tudor was going to put out, and yeah, I pretty much knew what was going to be put out there from the start.
Okay, Cam, thank you very much. Jordan, if I come to you, what was your thinking on the team? I mean, down to the bare bones, quite literally, it felt like pre-match. So to predict the 11, I would say is easier than ever, and that would probably be true, but certainly not easy at all to come up with the idea of A, the formation, but B, in particular, who's going to play where. I don't know about you, but I don't think I've got it anywhere near right.
No, exactly. I think we've seen Tudor sort of chop and change a little bit, which, you know, coming in late, I think was always going to happen. I don't think even himself knows he's sort of best 11 or best kind of position for each player. I mean, we've been crying out for ages for a left-footed left back. So I saw Sousa starting. I thought, you know, even if it's three at the back, maybe, you know, Porro tucking into the back three, Spence right wing back, Sousa on the left, and then you see Sousa suddenly playing right wing. It did throw me off, I'm not going to lie, but it seemed to have, you know, for as bad as it could have been, I sort of liked the way it played out. As I say, it's difficult to kind of predict where it was going to be. You've got Richarlison and Tell. Obviously, ended up in almost like a 4-4-2 sort of, with sort of two traditional strikers up top. But then you see Tell. I thought, what is he going to try and go three up front? Maybe Tell behind him, Richarlison off the left, Tell on the right. I like the fact that he's sort of seemingly willing to change it a little bit. And I hope that, you know, moving forward, it's more, I guess, less shoehorning players into a particular system that hasn't really worked at the moment, and more playing what we've got, playing your position, but also not just playing your position the way that Thomas Frank would, but also, you know, how do we attack where they may have weaknesses, or what kind of pressures do we put on them that we actually can, as you say, down to the bare bones. And what is it, 13 first team players out injured now?
Yeah.
So yeah, we're did as much as we can, but yeah, a very weird team selection, but seemed to work out okay this time.
100%. Jordan, thank you very much. Luke, Vicario in goal. No real surprise there after what we saw with Kinski and Atletico. Of course, yeah, quite a sad state of affairs, but we'll get into it a little bit later potentially. But do we have a goalkeeping problem at Tottenham? And if we do, how significant is it? Because you will know, we all know as fans, the goalkeeper's got to have trust in the back line, but more importantly, the back line got to trust the goalkeeper. And if they don't, that's where you get issues, especially in the situation we're in. We need 100% trust and 100% fight.
Yeah, I agree. I do think it's an issue. I think it's been an issue for a couple of years, but I think the problem we've got at Spurs is that we've got so many issues. It's where does that rank on priority list? And up until probably January, I would have said that Vicario is a player that probably needs to go eventually, but we've got other priorities that we need to kind of worry about at this moment in time. However, with every passing week, he's almost becoming more and more of a priority position to kind of move him on. It would be really interesting to know what Tudor's tactics and who was going to play if Gallagher was fit, because he mentioned several times that Gallagher was going to play in the middle, and Gallagher has played on the right for him. So it'd be interesting to know whether Sousa was always playing on that right-hand side, or whether it was just because of the last-minute change was maybe Sarr going there for his energy and Gallagher going in the middle. So be interesting to know. But as the guys have said, it's good to know that he is able to move away from it. There was some stats that came out about how often he played back threes and back fours, and it didn't seem like he came away from the back three very much at all. So it definitely worked on the day. And from what I could gather as well, they also done the pre-match. They was actually doing it in a back three. So maybe that was to try and take Liverpool by surprise, which I certainly think it did. But yeah, we'll have to see, because as you said, it's very, very interesting. Every week we can know exactly what players are going to be out there, but I don't think the graphics before the game help, because that even confuses things even more. But it'd be interesting to see in the coming weeks, hopefully get a few more players back, and then it's more and more difficult to try and work out that lineup.
Absolutely that. I mean, we all want players back, but if you're those that predict the lineup, some people really enjoy to do it, then ultimately you want less players available. But the important thing is players coming back has got to be a good thing. Thank you very much. So on to the action itself then. If we go to the first goal of the game, which went to Liverpool in the 18th minute through Dominic Szoboszlai, a free kick. He scored quite a few of them this year. He's got real talent when it comes to free kicks. Jordan, I come to you on Vicario. Has he got to do better? And has your thinking changed now? You've maybe seen it back, you've seen it on replay, a little bit later at the time, but also now, because I think a lot of fans' first impression, correct me if I'm wrong, was that, good free kick from Szoboszlai. But when you watch it back, for me anyway, personally, it was more centrally than I originally thought.
Yeah, for me, without kind of adding to the pile-on of, the issues we're having around keepers, especially off the back of Kinski, and I don't think Vicario's had a great season altogether. He's a weird one because I feel like he reminds me a little bit of how Aurelio Gomez used to be, where he'd make a world-class save and then just decide to volley it into his own net. It's like very strange kind of erratic goalkeeping that is always kind of nerve-wracking, but especially when you're in a relegation fight, you kind of think back to Pickford at Everton, who really kind of rallied up and they sort of knew they had that, not only a good player, but that kind of leadership. The thing that worries me about Vicario is it's not there. And I think that that free kick goal is probably a good example of it. I think up until then, I don't want to say we was on top, but we was at least in the game, and it really killed any momentum that we was doing. It did seem, it's hard. Listen, I've never played in goal. I've never been a goalkeeper. And I think it's one of the hardest positions to criticise if you've not been in between the posts. But it certainly looked like, for me, it was a weak hand that got there. I think the positioning at the beginning was not great, and you were sort of always going to be clambering over to that side. And I don't even think that the free kick was hit as well as he has done in the past. As you say, I think he's got 5 free kicks now, whether that's in the Prem or across competitions, I'm not sure. But definitely from my point of view, savable. But then he does make some good saves later on in the game. But just on that free kick, yeah, definitely savable, and what could have started a massive turn in what could have been a scary result if it carried on.
100%. Thank you, Jordan, very much. Luke, with this free kick, you under a similar view that Vicario just has to do better, weak goalkeeping?
Yeah, as soon as I actually looked at the position of the goalkeeper when he landed and realised that when he dived, he was actually in the middle of the goal. So I kind of had a suspicion that it wasn't as in the corner as I first thought. Szoboszlai is an absolute demon from free kicks. Some of the ones that he scored are ridiculous. I'm sure Sky said the stat is there's been 12 goals direct from free kicks in the Premier League this year, and he's got 4 of them. So that's 25% or something like that. It was saying that it was so he's obviously good from them, but this one is just a routine catch. It wasn't like it took a deflection or anything like that, and it was quite sad to see because I feel like he obviously Kinski had some issues, but then Vicario came on against Atletico Madrid and he seemed to improve. He seemed to be much better in the rest of that game. But as Jordan rightly said, many people will forget about the save that he made from Salah, because actually that would have killed the game. I think Dragusin kind of made a little bit of a mess of it, and Salah, we all know what he's like when he's one-on-one or close to goal. He's normally lethal, so to get a little touch on that is good. But yeah, there needs to be some confidence build, but hopefully that result will build the confidence for everybody, because as I said, Vicario probably should have got to it, but he also made a good save, which you can argue is an okay performance from him, and he just needs to build on that now.
Luke, thank you very much. Cam, is that the harsh reality of a goalkeeper? Jordan in particular said it just earlier, just a minute ago, about goalkeepers are a really tough position to be, and none of us probably would want to be goalkeepers. Could be wrong about that, but the point is, do you think that is just the ultimate reality of being a goalkeeper, in terms of we're focused on that, but not the amazing save he meant for Mo Salah? Or Cam, and it could be both, I suppose, but you look at it and go, Vicario's contributed to too many goals we've conceded, and he deserves no sympathy here.
Yeah, I think he's made these mistakes throughout the whole season. I think if we had a goalkeeper, right, who is constantly making good saves, constantly making good performances or having good performances, and then he makes like a one in every 10, or not even 10, like one in every 20 games he makes a mistake, that's just what a goalkeeper is. A goalkeeper is not perfect, but we can clearly see here that Vicario is nowhere near perfect because he's costing us a goal almost every single game that we play in and every game that he plays in. It feels like every time we're playing him, there's always, a moment where he's always doing something stupid that either leads to a goal or doesn't, but majority of the time it does lead to a goal that we concede. It feels like a lot of the time, like the back line just don't really feel comfortable when he's playing. And of course, that Atletico Madrid game Kinski played, and it definitely wasn't pretty to say the least. But I feel like majority of the time when Vicario is playing, he doesn't exactly fill the defense with much confidence, in my opinion. And that comes with multiple things. I feel like the defense has not exactly been amazing this season either, but I don't feel like the goalkeeper particularly helps them either. But yeah, I feel like that is, the norm with most goalkeepers. I feel like, if they make a great save, it might get praised quite a bit. But after that, a lot of people do kind of seem to forget kind of what he does a lot for us. But, then he makes a bozo moment like he does almost every single game. It's not like it's a rare occasion for Vicario because he does it quite a lot. And, it's cost us a lot of goals this season, a lot. But yeah, it's a weird one for me because, like, let's say, like, he'll have some really good moments where he saves us and, gets us out of games. We saw it against Monaco in the Champions League. He kept the clean sheet. He was great in that game, stopped us from, losing that point in the Champions League. But then he also has games like the one against Fulham where, I'm just thinking in that moment, you've just got to kick the ball out of play. And instead, he's kicked it to the other Fulham player. He's not even jogging back to his goal. It's these type of moments, and he's had these moments for throughout the season, whether it's that, whether it's powering it into his own net when really he should probably be catching the ball at times, like we saw, on the weekend. It's these moments which I think fans aren't unhappy with, and as I said, Vicario does it a lot, and this is what people mean by is there a goalkeeper problem at Tottenham? Because I feel like Kinski, he's not played really all this season. He had that one game against Atletico, which, in my personal opinion, I think that's the wrong game that Tudor thrown him in. But oh well. But he's not played that much this season. He played against Doncaster. He played against Atletico Madrid. Against Doncaster, I think he was actually all right, albeit we're playing a League One side. But I feel like, yeah, it's a weird one because I feel like ever since Lloris left, I know he was poor in that last season that he had for us, but I feel like ever since Lloris left the club, I feel like that's when we've had a massive keeper problem at the club because, he had his bad moments as well at times, especially in that last season. But I feel like ever since Vicario's joined the club, in that first season, he was all right. But I feel like since then, he has not really been good enough for us. He's always had these bad moments consistently on almost every single game that he's played for us. And yeah, whilst I do feel for him at times because, of course, being a keeper, it's not particularly easy. And, keepers or people who have played as a goalkeeper will probably, know what I'm talking about. But at the same time, he doesn't really help himself. And he keeps making these mistakes every single game now. It's always costing us goals. And for me, I feel that's definitely an area that we have to address, going into the summer.
Cam, thank you. Jimmy Hotspur here in the YouTube comments says Vicario has conceded 11 goals from outside the box this season, 4 more than the next worst. We definitely have got a problem there. And he says also, remember, Vicario is 6'4". But something I just want to read out a stat here. Vicario, according to data, so this across a couple of different platforms that provide this data, suggests that he's at fault for 68% of the total goals that Tottenham have conceded this season. So that's quite a big amount to put on one individual. But before we get on to Tottenham's goal, there was a moment where Richarlison, who was the goal scorer in the end, but before that was in on goal and was tugged up by Van Dijk, I should say. Definitely not Van der Ven. He was not involved, by Van Dijk of Liverpool. And the commentators praised the defender of Van Dijk, and the VAR check, well, it was ongoing, but it was very quick. So, Luke, I'll come to you. If you remember the moment I'm speaking about, for you to look at that and go, that's a foul and penalty, because if it is, that creates the whole kind of beans, the whole rabbit hole, really, of is it a red card as well? Because it's a clear denial of goal scoring opportunity if it's deemed a foul. So do you think that VAR, the on-field official included in that, chose the easy option to not give anything to play on?
Yeah, I think it's one of them where if it wasn't Van Dijk and it wasn't Liverpool and it wasn't at home, then it probably it could be given the other way so easily. I feel like that the only difference with the major sort of difference with him and the Van der Ven one was it wasn't really a pull on the arm. It was more like he was holding him from the shoulder. So it was a slightly different foul. However, the reason why he was holding is because Richarlison's getting away from him. He's essentially pulling him back. In other words, he just isn't pulling him by the arm. He's pulling him by the shoulder. So it's a real strange one. But I feel like this again is reputation based. If that was Romero, it's probably a 10-game ban and he's sent off for violent conduct. It's just the way that sometimes reputation comes into it. I feel like, especially with commentary and the way it seems to be going, if you're a certain player at a certain club, then you might get a little bit more you might get away with certain bits and pieces, whereas at Spurs that certainly doesn't happen. But it also just falls as part of when you're in the trenches, when you're really struggling, when you're in bad form, these sorts of things just don't go your way. And I'm just glad that Richarlison was able to recover and actually get the goal that I think he thoroughly deserves. But yes, I think that if that was given, there wouldn't be a lot of people in the Premier League that would be moaning about it for sure.
Okay, interesting. Thank you very much. Do appreciate it. Jordan, if I come to you, 90th minute then, so probably leaving it late, Richarlison scored. Would it be fair to say, A, the goal was coming, but B, also impressed that after conceding in the 18th minute, we didn't collapse because of Atletico for different reasons. Some would say out of our control, such as on the pitch, but ultimately we collapsed quite quickly. For example, in 18 minutes, we were a lot more a lot further down. When I was at work and I saw that Liverpool had scored, I was like, oh no, here we go. This is going to be potentially the start of something. So talk to you about, were you surprised that we've managed to keep it at 1-0 and then get the goal to get us back in it?
Yeah, 100%. Very similar to what you're saying. I feel like everyone was expecting the pile-on from there. I think one benefit is that we're not seeing a Liverpool of last season or a few seasons. I've got quite a lot of Liverpool friends and they're not under any facade that they're playing especially well this season. I think there are some issues going on over there. A lot of Liverpool fans aren't actually happy with Slot at all. And it's always funny seeing other teams complain when they are quite literally the other end of the table to us and champions last season. But away from that, I think I was really impressed with, I guess that kind of stability of one, just not completely capitulating, but also it looked like from the goal we sort of carried on going for it. As you say, there was a few moments where they could have got one or two, but there was also a few moments where we could have got one or two, like the penalty. Richarlison was kind of behind a few headers. There was a few different, I think, Tell potentially had a shot that challenged. Obviously, he had the Sousa shot early on in the game. I think it's the first bit of actual fight and a little bit of grit between the teeth that we've shown in any situation, sort of this season, if I'm honest. And what I'm really hoping for is, sort of regardless of the result on Wednesday, if the momentum can carry on, whether that's, I'm not confident that we'll go through, but if it's a good enough performance and maybe we get a win or anything like that to then continue that momentum through, I think the fact, going back to your question, the fact that we didn't completely kind of implode was felt like a little bit of unity with the team, and that's something we haven't really seen, especially since going's got tough this whole season. So definitely, yeah.
Okay, Jordan, thank you very much. Thank you. Cam, if I come back to you on this goal, I mean, what do you make of the move as well? Because it was kind of a long ball, and Mwani's won it ultimately. Well, I think it comes off Robertson because Mwani originally turns away from it, not really interested, in my opinion, in winning the ball. But anyway, it falls to him. But to his credit, close ball control was incredible, I think, in this situation. Exactly why he was brought on, ultimately that perfect substitution that Tudor will claim. And the ball through to Richarlison. Not the prettiest of finishes, but it goes in. That's all that matters, right? It's a goal and a point.
Yeah, I think that's all that matters, to be honest. I'm happy with that we actually went for long ball as well. In that moment, I think it was the 89th, 90th minute, approaching added time. I think we kind of had to go for it at that stage. Whilst I thought, it wasn't the prettiest of goals, as you said, Harry, I think the way that Mwani carried the ball, got into the Liverpool box, found Richarlison and, not the most meaningful finishes, but it does go in and he put it into the back of the net, which is all that matters for us. I did really, like that move from Marnie. And, whilst I don't think that he basically won the ball in the same fashion, I think the way that he carried it into the box and, as I said, found Richarlison, I think it was a, good move at that. Poor from Liverpool's perspective as well. I think, they could have done much better in that to, nullify that move. But I do think it was, a great move from Marnie. And what apart from him and Xavi Simons, we didn't really have, much difference, to bring off the bench, with our injuries this season. But I think he came on and, that's going to be the moment, of the game. And, so be it, because, it was an equaliser and he's, made that. And I feel like with Marnie, he has these moments, and I feel like if he just shows that he could care a bit more, then I think he could be good for us, in these last couple months of the season. Because, he had that goal against Arsenal. He had, he should have had two, because, that Gabriel foul. So he should have had 2 goals in that game. But I feel like when he's come on, when he's started, I feel like he's actually, been quite good. I just feel like he needs to show a bit more in terms of, hard working, keep running, keep pressing. I just feel like he needs to, keep it up. I know he's there on loan. He probably will go back to PSG next season, but I feel like in that goal he's just so crucial. And whilst Richarlison's the goal scorer, I do think Marnie deserves credit in that, for getting us that equaliser, come off the bench and making that impact that he did.
Okay, thank you very much. TTID in the YouTube comment says that Moani did well to hold off Robertson and Van Dijk. Best thing he's done in a Spurs shirt. And Jimmy Hotspur says the goal was a miss hit. He scuffed it, but it's still winning. Exactly that. Winning. And that's all that matters. But Luke, Richarlison in particular as well, haunting Liverpool again. I don't know about you, but when I saw his name on the team sheet, I was like, yes, come on. Is this Richarlison? And I think we'll get onto him a little bit. But as we all know, not the perfect striker, let's just say. And sometimes I'm sure frustrating, as one of our own players. But ultimately, especially against Liverpool, he's more than likely going to score. And if he doesn't, he's going to at least be a threat. And it just felt fitting that he scored and very late in the game against Liverpool.
Yeah, I mean, he's not the perfect striker by any stretch, but he is in the situation that we're in. If you're in a relegation battle, you need players with character. You need players that are going to put themselves about, try hard, and he does all of those things. I said a while back, even under Frank, I could never really tell what sort of team we were. We didn't want to dictate the ball, but we did play the ball through the middle on occasions. We didn't really go down the wing because we didn't have any wide players that were wide. They was always inverted. Could never work out what we are. And I just said, why don't we just go long? Just get Richie, just get Solanke, just go long, win the second balls. And that's how you can create some sort of drama. And that's exactly what happened. And Richie absolutely scuffs the finishes. But at the end of the day, he had a great header that he really made great contact with against Atletico, and the keeper made a save. He had another good header against Liverpool, and the keeper made a save. So sometimes you do need to scuff it. I think he earned the right to scuff one and have it go in, to be honest with you. So yeah, I think it's a good thing. And if we can get him, I said a couple of weeks ago, if we can get him and Solanke playing most games, they will do enough to keep us up. I have no doubt about that. But it's whether or not we can keep them on the pitch, and also whether we don't lose more players in anywhere else on the pitch, because that seems to be the biggest issue. Every time we seem to come through it, there seems to be more injuries that come about. But those two players, I know Solanke from certain aspects of the fan base got criticised for yesterday, but I think he done so much off the ball. And actually, when you put the ball into him, he holds the ball up quite well. And we don't have anyone that does that. Everyone that gets the ball looks to try and give it away, not necessarily to the opposition, but sometimes to our players. It depends on how they're feeling. But they try to give it away as quickly as possible. They don't want to be on the ball for a long period of time, whereas Solanke's quite happy doing that. And I feel like they could be a good partnership up there. Solanke can come in, he can work hard as well. And I think Richie can be the one that goes and gets the goals and the plaudits, hopefully. But let's see. I think it was great for the young players. I know it's a horrible situation, but I was really impressed with Ola Sezi, the way he came on, the way he wanted to actually get on the ball, and kind of just pass the ball around and keep the ball ticking over. That's important. And it also shows that there is some sort of pathway for those young players. When you start trying to sign young players, they look at what's the likelihood of Spurs being able to get first team minutes at Spurs. And if you've got an injury crisis where you've got 13 senior players out, and your youth players still can't get on the pitch in even for a few minutes, then that would be quite fearful for me if I was a young player, because I wouldn't want to sign for that sort of club. So I think it was good all round. And the young players coming on for specifically the last few minutes, I think really gives the fan base a bit of optimism. It's easy to be able to get fans on side really quickly just by having some youth projects and prospects in your team and your squad.
100%. You're absolutely right with that. Fans do get behind that. Luke, thank you very much. So it ended 1-1. Luke, if I can come back to you, if that's okay, what are you thinking post-match? Do you look at it and go, a point at Anfield, for example, I don't necessarily want to use it as an example at the moment for various reasons, but Arsenal went there and they lost. Teams, even though Liverpool aren't the same, I think we can all agree this, Liverpool aren't the same this season. They're not the same at Anfield. Does it still feel significant for you to go to Anfield and get a point, to lose that, to end that losing streak? How big is it?
Yeah, there's so many different ways that you can take it. And when you get to the end of the season, this point could prove completely irrelevant, but it could prove absolutely vital as well. So it's vital that we don't lose again. Part of that will be because if we did, I think the manager has to go. I personally felt he would probably go after the Atletico Madrid game, but he obviously stayed in and he's able to get a result. But I understand why some people are still skeptical, and I think everyone's right to be skeptical, because up until this game, it's the first time we've actually seen something where you can see a future and what we're maybe going to do under him, etc. But it's still a point at Anfield. Like, it's still people go on, and you're right to say it, Liverpool have been in bad form. No, Spurs have been in bad form. Spurs have been in the worst form in the league. So for us to go and get a point anywhere would have been successful, let alone go into Anfield, which the crowd, the sort of situation, the fact they went one up. But then also you got to think about it psychologically, which sometimes fans don't do. All of the clubs that are below us have gone on. I don't think Forest have been on a great run, but West Ham in particular have been on a really good run. They get another point against City to be able to go level on points with us. And then they'll be sitting there going, Spurs are never getting anything at Liverpool. And then we do. And sometimes psychologically, that can be massive for players, because they think we've gone on this unbelievable run and picked up so many points in the last, I don't know how many games it's been now. And we still can't even reach the level or the point that they're on. So, yes, it could be absolutely huge. But next week against Forest, I know we've got a Champions League tie in a couple of days. But next week against Forest, for me, and I'm not speaking on behalf of anyone, just for me, I think this is the biggest Premier League game that the club have ever had.
Okay, interesting. That's a bold statement, but I think a lot of people have been in agreement with that, Luke. Thank you very much. Cam, can I come to you? What did you make on our performance? Of course, that's our best result under Tudor. Was it our best performance as well?
Well, I do definitely think that there were times during the game where, we definitely weren't perfect. There was definitely some questionable moments throughout the game. I feel like, whilst Liverpool, were perhaps, not great in defence and, we had opportunities for ourselves, I do definitely feel like Liverpool had a lot of opportunities to win that game and essentially even put it to bed, to be honest. I think they done really poorly to only score one goal, and it wasn't even from open play as well. But then, I want to give credit to us as well, because I do feel like that whilst, we did, kind of scuff our attacking opportunities, and, when we did have the ball, we weren't, keeping it as well. You could say the same for Liverpool, but I do feel like when we did have the ball, sometimes we weren't able to keep it as well, whether that's in the middle, whether that's out wide. But at the end of the day, we kept going and we kept fighting, and we got that equaliser, quality or not. That's all that matters. And I do like how when we went a goal down, I know that Liverpool have been poor this season, particularly at Anfield, but we've went a goal down at Anfield multiple times throughout the years, and since then we've conceded 4 or 5 goals. And as I said, Liverpool have not been great this season. They won the league last year. They're battling for Champions League football now. But I like how when we went a goal down, we didn't give up. We kept going. I know we had moments throughout the game where we could have done a whole lot better, and there were a lot of moments throughout the game for both teams in that matter. But I did like how, even when the bench players came on, they were making an impact as well. Simmons and Moani, even Olesesti as well. I think he done fairly well considering it's his Premier League debut. So hopefully there's going to be more minutes for him there. But I really did like how we just fought till the end, and we haven't seen that a lot this season. We've went 1-0 down, 2-0 down in games home and away, and we've not seemed to, for the most part, come back in those games. And even when we went a goal up as well, we saw against Palace, we went a goal up, Van de Ven goes and gets sent off. We concede 3 more goals, I think, in added time. And in these games, we haven't had a lot of fight. We haven't seen a lot of that this season. So I'm just glad to see that in this game, whilst the performance quality-wise maybe wasn't particularly there, albeit our injury list with those quality players, particularly they're not on the pitch and we don't really have those at our disposal at the moment. I do feel like the resilience that were in these players, that Tudor put in these players, I do really think we should give credit for.
And what you're saying there, Cam, to stick with you, I think you're right. Firstly, if I just give my opinion, but does that give you confidence moving forward? All the things you're saying there that have improved, and we've shown fight, got back in a game, for example, all these things that haven't happened in 2026 under Thomas Frank or Igor Tudor. Does it give you confidence that we played well, it felt like the goal was coming, and we got the goal? Do you think moving forward now, that little bit of confidence and to break up that kind of almost losing mentality, that could do the group the wonders and ultimately just give them a tiny bit of a lift?
Yeah, I do feel like that game could definitely boost the boys on to, in these 2 big games this week. I know that, the scoreline might be, a bit out of question on Wednesday. I do feel like if we get a goal, if we get 2 goals, I feel like a lot of people are going to think, okay, we're 5-2 down in the Champions League. We've got a game on Sunday. Do we step off the Champions League? Do we focus on the Premier League fully? I think either way, we're at home for that game as well. We're at home for both games. I feel like, if we turn it around like Madrid, whilst we're still in the Champions League, whilst we've, got 2 quarterfinal ties, that could, spur us on to, get a win against Forest. And, as Luke was saying, that Forest game is so big for us. And, with how we've been this season, that game could potentially, we've got a lot of football to play this season still, but I do feel like that Forest game, with how Forest have been doing as well, they've not particularly been great. We're at home as well after that game against Liverpool, depending on what happens against Atletico as well. Can that confidence that we had against Liverpool, or from that Liverpool game, get us a result against Forest? And this is kind of what I want to see. Are we gonna put in that fight in this game as well? Was it a one-off game, or are we going to actually continue fighting in every single game that we're playing in? Because before the Liverpool game, we're not seeing much of this, as I was saying. And I think after that game against Liverpool, this is just what the fans want to see. We want to see fight, because that is, whilst Liverpool were poor in that game, that is what can sometimes happen. Get equalisers, get winners, fight till the end, because those late moments, that's all that fans want. They just want the players to put in 110%. And sometimes that's what can happen. You can get those moments in the game where teams are potentially slacking off. And I feel like if we weren't putting in the fight that we were in that game, we would have lost 1-0, potentially even 2-0. I don't think we would have gotten anything out of that game. And all the fans want is just for us to fight through every single game. And it started from Liverpool, and it should start from here on. And that's what I feel. That's my personal opinion. I just feel like if we don't see that against Atletico Madrid, if we don't see that against Forest, if we don't see that for the rest of the season, then I think things are going to go back to normal, and that's up to the players, up to Tudor now to make things right now.
Cam, thank you. Covered a lot there. I do appreciate that. Thank you very much. Jordan, how good were our travelling supporters in the away end yesterday at Anfield? I don't know about you, but I heard them throughout the game, and to me, seemed far better and far louder than the Liverpool fans. So you would have thought that we were the home team.
Yeah, definitely, mate. I think our travelling fans, I think this season more than ever, have sort of proved their weight, man. I know a few people that go, and obviously you hear it through the socials, but through the TV and everything. Like, to stick by this team this season and to show up the way they are and really trying everything we can to drag the team along is super important. You look back at like Everton's survival, when they had the flares and someone was holding a dog up in the sky for some reason. I don't really know why they've done that, but we need to be that sort of, as cliche as it sounds, being that 12th man now more than ever, where everything feels a little bit disjointed. There's rumours about players talking about I'm going to leave after the season. I don't want to be here, etc., etc. If there's ever a time to get behind the team, I think it's probably more important now than it would be, chasing a title or chasing a trophy, etc. But yeah, you can't give enough credit to the travelling fans and the way it was received clearly by the players yesterday as well. Super, super important, man. Super important.
Absolutely, thank you. Big up to a comment here from Rodney Martin. He says, "Big up, Comedy Spurs. We are the Super Tottenham from the lane. Comedy Spurs." He says, "Lange out and Enoch out as well." Big up to anyone listening, of course. Thank you very, very much. But yeah, I just wanted to give you a quick shout out to the fans. I thought they were amazing, and Jordan puts it very nicely there. Luke, coming back to you, and you spoke about it briefly, but talk to me more about it, because we did have 2 debuts, Callum Olasesi and James Roswell. I mean, a couple of questions here. Good to see them get the debut, and is the future bright? But also, do we need to trust the youth that little bit more from now till the end of the season? Because prior to Liverpool, struggling, I'd argue, for fights, struggling for performances, certainly struggling for results. And we've got a youth academy there and there's a lot of talent in it. I think we can be in agreement on that. Do we need to show that trust in them to say, especially those that are not being funny, Spurs through and through, they know what it means as a Tottenham supporter? Do we need to give them more minutes in this relegation battle that we're in?
Yeah, you've got to be clever with it, right? And a big thing, I listen to quite a lot of podcasts and a lot of high performance podcasts, etc. And I think that's underrated that we don't really take into consideration is that there's generally an acceptance within the first team whether a young player can be there and they can trust them. What you don't want is a young player being on the pitch and no one giving them the ball because they don't trust them. So they have to earn that trust at training, regardless of what us fans. I don't want a manager to listen to what fans say. With all due respect, I see plenty of fans go from one opinion to another, have an opinion before a game, and then change it at the end of the game because they didn't really work out the way they said it was. We've all done it. We've all suggested plenty of transfers that have absolutely not worked out, and they've been terrible. But none of us will mention them because that won't see us in good light. So I don't want them to just listen to fans. But if we think that these players are good enough, then absolutely, especially in this sort of situation, I think it's difficult now, because every game is so pivotal, but there's nothing that shouldn't have stopped this happening 5, 6, 7 games ago. Like, we should absolutely be doing this. And we should be doing it more anyway. And it's crazy, right? Because I said I didn't really understand what we were playing style. I don't really understand what we are as a club at the moment, because we're so heavily focused on youth, but not our own youths. So it's like, well, what do we actually do? Like, what do we want here? Do we want to be a youth project, but only ones that we sign for 40 odd 50 million pounds? But that's not really saving you money in the longer term. So why would you not focus a bit? So we need to find that. We need to find our identity. And I've always felt that having young players come through is a really big thing. Olasesi is a player that likes to be on the ball. He likes to dictate. He enjoys running with it. He enjoys playing with it. He's the captain. So he's got some sort of responsibility, albeit at a lower level. But if you're a young player, if you're 14, 15, looking to make your next move, say from a Championship or League One club, if you've got a youth team at Spurs and none of them can play when there's 13 injuries, then why would you want to go to Spurs? Because you know that you're not going to get opportunity. So we have to decide that. As I say, it's difficult. They have to be ready. I don't believe in this thing that we should just throw them in because they're better than what we've got, because Vicario is the prime example here. I didn't ever think Kinski was good enough. I feel like he's a good player. I think he needs to go out on loan and get experience. But I felt there was a reason why Vicario had been the number one for 3 years, and Kinski had never, ever really raised any sort of effort to overtake him. And I think Spurs fans were kind of like, well, it can't be any worse than Vicario. Well, it can be, because we see the level when Vicario wasn't there. And I feel like that could be the same, right? We can sit here and say certain players are not up to standard, but they're in the Premier League and there's 4 divisions below. So there's a lot of standards that are below these sorts of players, unfortunately. So we need to do it cleverly. We need to do it well. And we need to make sure that we don't just throw them in at the deep end and they haven't got a structure that they can rely on and that sort of thing. But absolutely, having young players, again, I've had this gripe for a very long time. Last couple of minutes, even if it's just a couple of minutes, you just get the fans on side so much more when you see these young players coming through. So I definitely feel like that is something for the longer term we need to look at and do better as a club, because we've had a lot of prospects over the years. And other than probably Harry Kane, no one else has really fulfilled that potential. And I think part of that is how we manage young players, how we nurture them and how we get them into the first team, but also who we sign for them to learn from, right? At the moment, we're relying on players like Archie Gray, and we shouldn't be. He should be learning from the other experienced pros in this squad. So, but we could be here all week if we go down all those discussions, I'm sure.
We could. Luke, thank you very much. You make some excellent points in there. And you're right, Archie Gray needs to get in the habit of saying now 20 because he's just turned 20. But I think he's absolutely showing the maturity and versatility in particular that he's shown at his age. I mean, it's got to be inspiring for any, any individual that wants to get into football, any young player that's like, look, who do I want to aspire to be? I think Gray's a perfect example. Head down, crack on. Playing goodness knows how many positions, more than I can count on my hands, and do a fantastic job wherever he plays. Jordan, on a different note, 4-4-2 was the formation that was adopted in this game, probably unexpectedly, let's just say. Do you think that was because Tudor couldn't name a back five with Romero and Van der Ven being out? And ultimately, the big question and the more important one, should he and will he keep the 4-4-2 formation this week?
I think it's a difficult one. I don't think the three at the back, five at the back, whatever you want to call it, had earned sort of enough respect to then turn around and say, actually, we're going to revert back to that. If it was the case of we've been doing okay, but then had to go to a four back, then fair enough, go back to the three. But I don't think we have the players. Well, we don't probably really have the players to fulfill any sort of formation at the moment. But it's been our best performance. It's been our best result. So it seems like a silly thing to revert back to the system that potentially needed a whole pre-season to do. I think bringing in, I was intrigued by Tudor coming in. I think that was probably more on the side of getting Frank out. But I think with a manager that, as we know, was very strict on his system and sort of relied on that three at the back quite kind of stoically, the fact of bringing him half with 10 games to go was always going to be a risk that if he was only going to play one system, right? And if it was going to be a system that players and then coaches and stuff needed to learn, to then expect a big change and turnaround that quickly was always going to be a risk. It hasn't worked, clearly, whether that's a personnel or coaching thing or anything like that. And then we just had a 4-4-2 that clearly has worked, or I say worked. As I say, we've got the best result and best performance. So there's no reason why it couldn't. Obviously, the 4-4-2 was sort of put in kind of, expecting the Liverpool to have the lion's share of possession and be attacking. So always had, the two up front, sort of cutting off the passing lanes from the centre-backs. Obviously, we know about Van Dijk's passing range, etc. So it worked against Liverpool. I don't think... we've asked him to be adaptable. You'd like to think that he has enough sort in the game where if he then believes going to a three at the back against Atletico or Nottingham Forest, etc., if that would be better. I guess you have to sort of go with it. For me, four at the back suits the personnel better, and I think we looked a much more cohesive defensive unit this time. As I say, to concede one goal and it wasn't even from open play, and defending pretty solidly was definitely a good thing. So I think if you had to ask me now, I think you've got to stick with it. I think you've got to try and ride the momentum and sort of go off the formations and patterns of play that worked in the last game, especially in the situation that we're in now.
Jordan, thank you very much. Let's see what Tudor will do. Before we move on and get into some other stuff, such as Tudor's future, a protest has been called off for Forest and also preview at Atletico. A few more stuff then to review and to talk about ultimately many questions. Cam, next question I have at the top of my head that I want to give to you is Richarlison. We spoke about him earlier, but I think he's worthy of even more discussion. Away from what we've seen in this game, and you can by all means link it in, has Richarlison, for you, got to start the majority, if not all, of Tottenham's remaining games? I'm talking, of course, in the Premier League, because some would say, myself included, that he's been in this position before, factually, with a relegation battle with Everton, and his goals are, again, arguably, single-handedly as well as just contributed, kept Everton up. His goals kept them up. So he's got that experience. And do you think we need someone like Richarlison, literally Richarlison in this case, his fight, his grit and determination, because we can all agree, as I said before, he's not the best striker in the world, but he does give you fight, he does give you passion, and he will stuck in. Is that what you need in the relegation battle we're in?
Yeah, I feel like even at the first half of the season, when he was fit, he was actually getting, a fair bit of goals for us. And I feel like, when he's playing, of course he plays up top, but I feel like when we play with him, I feel like we have a lot more goal threat up top when he plays. And I feel like whilst he's not perfect, a lot of people do kind of, criticize him sometimes. And throughout these seasons, of course, there's been some moments where, he's not exactly been up to no good. But I do feel like in this moment, with what you said, Harry, he was previously at Everton. With his goals, it helped them, survive relegation on that final day. I do feel like we need a player like him, and I feel like if you look away from Richarlison, we haven't particularly got many players who have been in this, sort of situation before. I feel like he could be that kind of guy who, can lead us away from this mess, kind of, lead us away and try and, get us out of this battle, help us survive, help us stay up, and from next season, go from there. I feel like his goals are really going to help us this season. He was, scoring in the first half of the season. I feel like now it's the time where he's got to show up and, get those goals and help us throughout games. And, we've seen it. We've seen it throughout most of the season when he has been on the pitch. He's shown 100%. He's fought throughout every single game. I don't see many moments when he's playing when he just gives up. He doesn't really care that much. I don't really see that with him at all. I feel like we need that kind of character, and he's experienced relegation or a relegation battle himself. I feel like that's the character we need at this moment in time. I think before the Liverpool game, we were joint on points with West Ham and Forest. We were joint 18th with both of them. And I think, most people, including Tottenham fans, thought we weren't going to get anything out of that Liverpool game. And Richarlison, being how he is, scores against Liverpool and gets us to that point to, perhaps not be comfortably safe from relegation right now or safe from the drop. But, it's a key moment for us to build off this momentum. And I feel like Richarlison needs to be that guy now to step up and be like, okay, I'm going to get Tottenham out of this mess, out of this relegation battle. And I feel like with his goals, I think it could be a real possibility this season.
Cam, thank you for that. Appreciate it. Can I stick with you if that's all right? Bradley Dragusin, I don't want to talk too many negatives, but what did you make of his performance? Some will be concerned, but not surprised based on what they've seen. But in particular, his big mouth agent, let's just say how it is, because he is big mouthed. Is he looking silly now, saying that he should have chose Real Madrid over Tottenham, and the constantly going on like he has, that he's good enough to play for Real Madrid? That's got to be his next step. Tottenham's a stepping stone. All these things he's come out with very quickly. Funny how he's also gone quiet in 2026.
Yeah, I don't think Radio's agent really helps him at all, to be honest, particularly with his performances that he kind of had as well. He has these moments throughout the game where he's not really that guy, in my opinion, to be in that starting position for Tottenham, and he's forced to because Bale and Romero are both out, and we don't particularly have all of our defenders available at the moment. But when his agent says, "Oh, he'll be in like Real Madrid in like a few years," or like, "Oh, he's Real Madrid level," I feel like Dragusin, surely he's looking at that and thinking, "Mate, what are you doing? Bro, I don't need this talk about me right now." I feel like it's just, okay, I'm at Tottenham. Let's focus on the task at hand. Let's focus on, playing for Tottenham, performing well for Tottenham, not talking about other clubs. I feel like that's what Dragusin's agent should probably be recommending to his agent instead of talking about other clubs. And we've seen it with other players as well. Players' agents have kind of been, asked questions about like, "Oh, is this player going to another club?" It's all, no, he's at this club right now. He's under contract. He's focusing on the season with them, not talking about other clubs, not talking about, "Oh, he's at this level. He might be there in a few years." We need to, sod that off. And I think Dragusin and his agent need to, get knuckled down and focus on Tottenham. And, with the situation we're in, I think that's well needed as well.
Definitely. Cam, thank you very much. Luke, if I come to you, should Kevin Danso keep his place provisionally for the rest of the season after what we've seen from Dragusin? Some saying that Mickey van der Ven isn't fully committed. The fact Romero, of course, as we know, loves to pick up certainly a red card, but also a yellow card. Do you think Danso's warranted enough and been reliable and solid enough to keep his place?
I think he's definitely deserving to play the next game, 100%. But if we get Romero and Van der Ven anywhere near their level, then they're the best centre halves at the club, and they have to play for me. There's a reason why we wrapped them up in cotton wool towards the end of last season. It's because they're a better level. I like Danso. I think his endeavour, his character, I think is really, really good. But I think people are very, very quick to also forget that Danso has come in and had some really bad games as well. But we seem to have this, again, it's similar to what I was saying about the FA and they're having favourites. Our fan base seems to have certain favourites as well. And when they have bad performances, they're not spoken about whatsoever. And Danso's had a few of them this year. And that's not just on him, that's on every single player, because we've all had those. They've all had those. But after the performance against Liverpool, he definitely deserves to play the next one, and he'll have to keep at that level. And if he keeps at that level, then I have no doubt he'll continue to play games. But Danso is not at the required level to be saying that he should play every single game for you, in my eyes, especially when you have Romero and Van der Ven there. I know there have been loads of reports about Van der Ven and him saying this, but I personally don't see it. And if he doesn't play another game from now to the end of the season, then I'm proved absolutely wrong. And it probably was him that was doing these sorts of stuff. But we're not on the training pitch. We don't understand it. And if I was a team in trouble, if I was struggling, I would want to look around and see Romero in my team and a Van der Ven. Again, this is bearing in mind if they're playing at the required level. I'd want to see those two on that pitch as regular as I possibly can. But he deserves to play the next one for sure. And if he keeps up that momentum and plays to that level, then he will continue to play games, whether it be Van der Ven moving to left back.
I personally agree with you, Luke, in your opinion there that something's been overblown or it's not 100% true. But what I will say, just to throw a question, if you don't mind, out there, spanner in the works. Let's say it is true that Van der Ven's head's not with it. His comments are a little bit worrying about the group as a whole. Let's say in his head, the latest rumours is Barcelona, etc. Let's say he's checked out. What would you do in that situation then? Because I'm in agreement with you that include Romero as well, but Van der Ven, they both got the quality. Over Danso, who's great, solid, reliable as Danso, but not the same quality. What would you do then? Do you go with quality? Or do you go with who's going to bring the fight? Who's going to be in that right headspace?
No, if they're checked out, there's no point in being in and around it, and they're just going to be a pain for the rest of the other players that are around. You need the right attitude, and that's what I'm saying. It depends on where they're at and what level they play at. I think that you know what you're going to get with Richarlison. You know that he's going to be a pest. You know that he's going to score goals, that he's going to create chances. He's going to be a bit of a nuisance. So you could turn around and say he should play virtually every single game because but you can't, we could all sit here and say who's the best striker out of all three, him, Moani and Solanke, and we may all give different ideas. But if you have your best centre-backs fully fit, then and raring to go, then Romero and Van der Ven are standout. So if he's checked out, then absolutely he shouldn't be anywhere near the squad. And to be honest with you, if he was checked out, I'd rather probably have Byfield play because that's the sort of position we're in. We can't have someone, particularly in those positions, not actually all trying. And Romero and Danso will do a decent job, I'm sure. It gives us some other issues because we don't, on that left-hand side, we're then struggling. We don't have the left-footedness of a centre half. Obviously, Spencer's played left back most of the time as well, so that brings its own problems. But having fight, having endeavour, having that will to go out there and fight for the person next to you is absolutely key in this, and we need that more than we need anything else. But on the other hand, we also need quality to get us over the line to win us games, and I feel like a fully fit Romero and Van der Ven, a fully fit Solanke and Richarlison, I think they will be the difference between us potentially staying up and going down.
Well explained there, Luke.
Sorry, Jimmy Hotspur. No, I didn't say I dropped Danso. I said Danso should play if he keeps playing at this level. I think if Van der Ven, Van der Ven is interested and wants to be involved, I can see a world in which Porro, Romero, Danso, and Van der Ven is the back four possibly going forward.
Interesting. Yeah, it's certainly a headache for Tudor, but ultimately he will want that headache in terms of he'll want everyone available to choose from. Much rather that, more centre backs, more defenders. The whole team would rather be available, of course, even if they aren't up and firing. But before we get on to Change For Tottenham protest that's been called off, which you only lightly touch on, go into it in more detail later in the week to get closer to Forest. And also we'll be previewing Atletico in a minute. But first, Tudor's future, because according to Alistair Gold, who reported for the Football London today, he said, as first to break it, that Tottenham Hotspur have confirmed that Igor Tudor will take the Champions League pre-match press conference ahead of Atletico Madrid, and the expectations he will also with Forest. Cam, what do you make of this news, and what do you think around Igor Tudor? Is he the right man, the wrong man? And regardless of that, do you think it's right that he's in charge of this game based on what we've seen as well at Anfield, getting that draw and playing well?
Well, I saw David Ornstein report that Tottenham were looking at replacements before the Liverpool game, depending on the result. But after that game, I think we can definitely say for sure that Tudor's deserved staying in charge for the Champions League game, second leg, and of course against Forest as well. But if things do go wrong, let's say that we lose both of those games, let's say that it all goes back to normal, as we've seen with Tottenham this season. I'm pretty sure we've got an international break after that, so the club will have quite a bit of time if things do go wrong to, look at replacements. They're probably just in case. I don't think, they'll be urgently looking for replacements, but I think just in case things, don't go swimmingly in these next two games, I do think that Tottenham will look at replacements accordingly. But if things, do go good in these next two games, I don't think there is any potential need to replace Tudor at the moment. But of course, if things, don't go as good as what Tottenham fans would like, I think there's that time that the club have to look at replacements and potentially look at replacing Tudor.
Cam, thank you. And get the whole panel's thoughts on this one, because it is quite important, of course, discussing the manager here. Jordan, I'll come to you. Where do you stand with Igor Tudor?
Yeah, it was strange because I feel like me and a lot of Spurs fans before the Liverpool game sort of thought that'd be his last game. I think we was all expecting a loss, and then we thought, give the new manager the Atletico game, but obviously the Forest game being the most important as well. I think anything less than, as cliche as it sounds, obviously football's done on margins, right? If that Richarlison goal doesn't go in, I think the whole of Twitter is calling for Tudor's head now. So it's tough. It's really tough to know, but it's also, as I say, it's inches in the game that change stuff. So if a goal does go in, and then suddenly are we like, I don't want to be too sort of yo-yo and suddenly be like, okay, I want to back Tudor now. I don't think anything he showed before this game had any improvement on how he was under Frank, or showed any sort of change or anything, not to do the Joel Jason Cundy, but I sort of didn't see signs, so I think that was a difficult thing, that we didn't really understand what was happening, where we was going. Has that fight back in the Liverpool game and the late equaliser given the Atletico game? In my opinion, yeah. The Forest game's a tough one. I think, is it right to change something completely before the biggest game? Probably. I think he gets to both games now, and I think the decision's made after that Forest game. I think if he wins, he gets the international break and hopefully gets back. I think it's Kudus, and I think there's 2 or 3 other players that should be back after that. It's about a 2-week break, but knowing our luck, everyone else will break their leg when they go away. But the idea is that, he comes back after the international break with a much fuller squad. I think if he has an okay performance in the Champions League, as I say, I don't think we qualify, but anything that keeps the energy up a little bit for the next game. I think if he wins the Forest game, he should get the next few games, but anything less than a win at Forest, I think he goes and should go. Obviously, then the next issue is, who do you bring in? There was the Zerbi rumours, which I think is, for multiple reasons, the wrong decision to make, especially at, with 8 games left to go. I think that's a horrible decision, but I don't know who the next sort of alternative is if Tudor does go after that Forest game. But as I say, yeah, in my opinion, you keep him for the next 2 games, and you sort of have to judge. We're in that position where we can only really go game by game. We don't have the luxury of sort of hindsight or foresight where we can sort of really plan ahead. We've sort of got as bad as it sounds, we're in panic stations, right? So I think you've got to go game by game hopefully that's a Forest win and a decent performance at Atletico tomorrow, Wednesday, too.
Jordan, thank you. Luke, just briefly before we move on Tudor as well, to ask you the same question. You said earlier, I think you're actually right to say it, the magnitude, the severe importance of the game against Forest. Is he the guy you want in charge of Tottenham for that game?
I mean, the problem you've got is who's the alternative, right? You don't know what the alternative will be. So it's easy. I mean, we done it. This fan base done it under Ange and said anyone but him. They went and got Frank. Anyone but him, and exactly like what I said about Vicario. Unfortunately, that isn't the way it works. We're talking at elite levels here, and there's plenty that are going to be worse than what we've got. I would say after the first 4 games that we had, there was no signs of anything, as has previously been mentioned. But after that performance, the players are obviously playing for him. They didn't give up, because you could give up against Liverpool away from home going 1 down. It's very easy for them to dip their heads and not try, but they didn't. They were fighting. So very similar to what I was saying about Danso. Really, it's a game by game situation. You can't. We're going to get no good stuff happen to us if we're just loyal for no real reason. If we don't see anything in the next 2-3 games, we're not going to get any more brownie points for sticking with this manager. We need results. That was what he was brought in to do, and if he doesn't turn it around, then unfortunately that was what the remit was. With Frank, you brought him in and you were saying that we wanted to see stuff. There's a project we want to go over a number of years. With Tudor, it was come in, get results immediately, and he hadn't done that up until Liverpool. So I feel like the Atletico Madrid game is a difficult one. They've still got star quality in terms of Alvarez and Griezmann, so they could turn up and beat anybody. I think he will get the Forest game, unless it's an absolute embarrassment midweek. I think he'll get the Forest game. And then, as Jordan mentioned, they then have a decision to make. If he loses against Forest, it gives him a little bit of time to get someone in. But there isn't a perfect candidate, because if there was, he would have been gone. And that's a problem. So it's very, very difficult. But as I say, the Forest game is absolutely pivotal. We can't lose that. And if we don't lose it, then I think he stays. I think they'll try and keep him for as long as possible, really. And it's again over to him to deliver the results.
Luke, thank you very much. Thank you to the whole panel for your thoughts on Igor Tudor. Before I get your quick thoughts and score prediction for Atletico, just very, very briefly. So, Change for Tottenham in the last 24 hours have announced that the protest has been called off for Nottingham Forest. Here's their statement in full. They say, Change for Tottenham statement. They say, although this ownership and the board don't deserve it, we feel duty bound to stand with other supporters groups and the fan collective generally at the Nottingham Forest game. And we've made the difficult decision to postpone any potential protests for this game in what feels like an immediate generational threat to Tottenham Hotspur's status as a Premier League club. We're putting on hold any announced match day protests for now, while continue with our other initiatives. We will, however, continue monitoring the situation. This is a very difficult decision for us to make in light of the fact the ownership are responsible for putting us in this position. But first and foremost, we are fans of Tottenham Hotspur Football Club. Not to mention that the success of our movement is a numbers game. We've decided that at a time where fans feel we need to get behind the team, and whilst there's a separate supporters initiative being arranged for the Nottingham Forest match, it makes sense for us not to protest in this particular game. Lastly, they go to say, we appreciate all of the continued support from you as fans, and we hope that you can appreciate that this is an extremely difficult decision for us to make. We remain steadfast in our desire to hold the ownership and the board to account. But what feels like such a pivotal moment in our history, and indeed at a time where we feel the support for Change for Tottenham could risk being compromised, we're making this decision in spite of some of our own frustrations. As always, we support the team and not the regime, and we can only hope this further galvanises our fan base on this immediate threat of helping to pull the team over the line while cementing the deserved critique of what has been a shambolic ownership. Their time for action will come soon. Our voice in our club, Change for Tottenham. Luke, I'm just going to ask you about this. What did you make of that statement and ultimately the summary of that they've called the protest off for the Forest game? Do you agree with that decision?
Yeah, I do agree with it, because they're in a position where they're never going to win, right? If they protest now and we go down, people will blame them. And they'll say, well, you're the reason that we got relegated. Like they did, if you remember rightly, in January, they protested just before the end of the window. And there was a lot of people in this fan base that said, you was bang out of order. You shouldn't do that. and then we got delivered the worst transfer window we've ever had. So they're in a situation where, regardless of what they do, they're going to look wrong. But right now, it's not about being wrong or being right. It's about making sure we do everything we possibly can to back the team. And if we could somehow get over the line, we can worry about what we need to worry about further down the line. So I think it is the right decision. And also, what you want to do is, when you are having a protest, you want to get as many people there as possible. So if you've got initiatives taking place, different initiatives across the same day, you're going to lose numbers. Then it doesn't become as apparent. It doesn't become as serious. So I've heard what they're going to do, and I've seen some things of what they're going to do, and I think it's very, very good. So I think they should definitely, every fan should try and get behind it as much as possible. We're all in this together, whether it's just for a few months with some of the players leaving. That's absolutely fine. But one thing we do not want at this football club is for us to be relegated. So try and do everything we possibly can to create an atmosphere where it gives them a platform to go on and perform on the pitch.
Okay, Luke, thank you very much for that. Do appreciate it. Then just quickly, our thoughts and score prediction for Atletico. Cam, starting with you, we're going to run through it quickly. So yeah, give me your thoughts in under 60 seconds and your score prediction at the end of it.
Well, this is going to be a hard one to predict, to be honest, because I think whilst Atletico, they've been good, at home in La Liga. I feel like, because they beat I remember they beat Barcelona 4-0 at home, and they lost 3-0 away. So Barcelona did almost bring it back, but at the end of the day, we aren't Barcelona, so I have no clue what's going to happen in this one. But we're at home. I feel like if the fans are truly going to get behind the team, I feel like we can, do anything, especially at home as well. And I feel like on European nights, Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, is a dream for our players to play at. And I feel like if we have that momentum behind us, maybe we can do it. I don't know, but it feels really hard to be fair, I just want to go like 4-0 to Tottenham, but I don't think that's going to happen, to be honest. But I don't know, because I know that Atletico are quality as well. But then you know what I did read though? I think their first choice goalkeeper Jan Oblak's out of this game. He didn't play on the weekend.
Yes, that's
didn't
right.
play. Yeah, didn't play against Getafe. So they'll have their second choice goalkeeper. The only thing in my head is 4-0 Tottenham, to be honest. That's the only thing in my head, and I don't know.
Why not?
I'm going to do it for the culture. 4-0 Tottenham. Why not? 7-6 on aggregate as well. Jeez.
Oh, yes, I'd love that. Confidence going into Forest. Cam, thank you very much. A couple of pieces of news then before we go around to the rest of the panel. Romero and Paulinho both face a late fitness test. Manager Igor Tudor said, I think they will be back for sure for Forest, maybe even for the Champions League. I don't know exactly at this point of his words. And Toby Alderweireld is back at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium as a special guest before the game, and I think at halftime as well, against Atletico. Jordan, particularly on that team news there, I mean, not knowing whether available or not makes it very difficult, I'm sure, to predict. But give us your thoughts going into it, and whether you think we should rest some players for Forest. I want to get your thoughts on that and your score prediction at the end of it.
I think it's difficult to talk about resting players. I don't really think we have enough players to rest. I guess the first thing is, do you try and get Toby to put a pair of boots on and get involved? Like, he's probably better than what we've got at the moment. But I don't know. It's going to be a tough game regardless. I think they showed that they're still a quality team. I think Griezmann, for me, has been one of the best players I've ever watched. I think he's very underrated, and I think games like that show that sort of quality that he still really does have, even if his legs are gone. I'm really hoping for a good performance. I'm not as confident as Cam is going into it. I think it's going to be a draw. If I have to say anything, I'd probably say a 1-1 or a 2-2, if I'm honest. I think it's one of them games where the first goal is huge, and I think one goal for them could completely drop our heads, where a goal for us might make it really, really interesting. But as that comment just said there, we did gift sort of 3 goals, and apart from that, we played okay. But again, I wouldn't rest anyone. I think if anything, it's more practice to put into that 4-4-2 or any 4-back that he wants to play. But yeah, as a prediction, I'd have to go. I'm gonna go 2-2, 2-2 draw.
Okay, thank you very much. So ultimately, you go out as a result, but we don't lose the game. Thank you very much, Jordan, for that. Luke, give us your thoughts and score prediction then. And also on this comment from Spurs diehards, they say that Atletico don't travel well. It is fair to say, isn't it? They aren't the same away from home as they are at home.
Yeah, I mean the pitch plays a big factor in that, and that's been an issue for them all season, to be honest with you. So, could I see a world in which I always, whenever it comes to Spurs, I always have two different opinions. It's almost like head and heart. So one of me says Cam's absolutely correct. I see nothing but a 4-0 win, and then the other part of me is going, "There's no way they win 4-0." So I think that Spurs with you never know what's going to turn up. You never know what game's going to be, what players are going to be there, etc. But I actually agree with Jordan. I think that we need to treat this not as a training game, but the game is against Forest. And with all due respect, it doesn't matter if we go through to the next round of the Champions League. It doesn't matter if we get to the semi-finals or even the final. If we get relegated, that will take us back so much more than winning the Champions League would. So that needs to be the focus. But also, I don't want it to just, we're competitive in it now. And if he would have gone with like young players, say, in midweek, then I could have seen a game where we play young players again. But if you played experienced pros in the last game, there's no way he's now gonna throw it at home. So I think that we could definitely cause them damage. We shown that we did. If we didn't gift them the goals, I mean, the Richarlison header was a great save by Oblak, and they go up the other end and score. So if that goal from Richarlison goes in, we had a couple of chances. Romero hit the post. You're talking about a 4-4 sort of game. So we definitely can create chances against them. But in terms of like Romero, for instance, as you said, it's a late fitness test. If there's a possibility where he can play one of the two, then for me, he plays against Forest. And I feel like that's all of the squad. If they can only play one of the two, I feel like the game should be that they play against Forest and we try and find alternatives in that game. I'm going to go 2-1 win, but it is so imperative on minor things. As Jordan mentioned, if they go 1-0 up within the first 10 minutes, the game's dead. If we go 1-0 up within the first 5 minutes, the game is absolutely on, and that stadium's going to be rocking under the lights. Atletico could start struggling. So there is fine margins are going to be absolutely key in this, and we probably need a little bit of luck and for big things to go our way. I don't think it's out of the realms of possibility that we don't manage to get over the line, but I think maybe a 2-1 win.
Okay, Luke, thank you again. At least we win the game, but we go out overall ultimately because gave ourselves a very hard task, let's just say. But Luke, totally agree with you. I think the first goal's key, but especially the timing of it. And thank you all, the whole panel, for your score predictions and thoughts going into it. Something I should have mentioned earlier as well. Rightly mentioned in the comments, Richarlison is suspended for this game. So with us not knowing what we've got available as well with Palhinha, Romero, it could be down to even more bare bones in this game. Richarlison adding to that list, it could be just 12 senior players at this point. Hopefully that changes. You get at least 2 or 3 players back. Might know in Tottenham, it could lose 2 or 3 players by then. So who knows what is capable, but we wait to see Tudor confirm that more than likely in the next 12 hours or so. But thank you very much. This wraps us up for this episode of the Scarfey Spurs podcast. Lastly, let's go through and see if we can find my guests on social media. But thank you to everyone who's watched the podcast and has got involved. Any questions that I haven't answered will be answered on the next podcast. I'll be making note of taking a screenshot, but just purely because of time. But I think it's been a very good episode, if I may say so myself. Thank you to my guests, all because of them and you amazing viewers as well. Cam, firstly, thank you. Where can people follow you on social media? Talk to people about your new channel, and if you've got anything coming, please do plug it.
Yes, you can follow me on my Twitter page there. The comments blocking it now, but there was a blue box there saying my Twitter is THFC_Cam.
There you go. My bad.
Yeah, there you go. Now I can see it. Yeah, I'll tweet about all things Tottenham, whether we're losing or whether we're getting that last minute equaliser against Liverpool. All the highs, all the lows. Yeah, pretty much everything at Tottenham. Of course, got a YouTube channel as well. Link in my Twitter bio. I'm pretty sure it is called Cam Talks Football. So I will have content out soon, I promise. I've been planning it for a while, so hopefully I'm going to have it out real soon. And yeah, I'm glad to be on tonight and glad to be talking about a positive result.
Glad to have you. And I share, absolutely, I tell you what, share that. Speechless to words, literally then. I absolutely agree that it's nice to not be talking about defeat, and that's something we haven't had the privilege to do very much, if at all, this year. Cam, thank you very much. Certainly not in the Premier League, that's for sure. Jordan, thank you very much for coming on. Great to have you. Where can people follow you on social media? Thank you.
No, I appreciate it, mate. Thank you. It's been good. Yeah, socials there, just on Twitter. Find me talking nonsense about Tottenham and other stuff. So go drop me a follow and be sure to see some of that. But yeah, thanks for another good episode, mate. Really enjoyed it.
No, thank you. Pleasure's mine. Thank you very much. And Luke, thank you. Always good to have you on. Like I said before, very talented. Where can people follow you, but also mainly your podcast if they want even more Tottenham Hotspur content?
I don't know if you need any more. I think the Spurs, unless we go on a bit of a run, I certainly don't need any more from this season. I'll have much less, please. If we have got more, that means Championship football next year. So let's go with the less. But Spotlight on Spurs on virtually everything: Facebook, Instagram, X, YouTube as well. We go live every Thursday, try and sum up and try to bring some sort of sense to this absolutely crazy club.
Must be a hard task.
It is. We don't make any sense of it because nobody can, but we try to, just like we all do. So thanks again for having me on. It's been great panel, and appreciate the support.
No, great stuff. Thank you to everyone for this episode. Come back Thursday, 7 p.m. UK time. That's Greenwich Mean Time. Live on YouTube or available after on YouTube and across all podcast platforms, wherever you get them, available in all different countries as well. Thank you so much. Hopefully next time you're hearing from me in terms of the podcast will be after we've somehow gone through. It will be nice, but ultimately let's not jinx anything. Let's hope we win the game, and let's hope that we have some positives at least to take from it. A massive come on you Spurs.